So let's move on. Now, given that many cities all around the world are having these same thoughts, and we know that the economy, and everybody's saying let's be creative, and we know that the economy has changed from the agrarian economy to industrial to knowledge economy and so on. But I counted some time ago that 60 or 70 cities said we are the creative city, whatever that is, Toronto, etc., Brisbane and so on. Well, if everybody is doing the same thing, what is really your emerging advantage? What is then so special about you? So we'll come back to that a bit later, what that might be. Now, another thing that also has changed is when we look at what urban success is, in the past people said it's things like gross domestic product or levels of employment. Now, all those things are quite important. But now people think that the four measures really is the capacity for you to retain and attract your talent, what goes in and what goes out, the capacity for you to invent things, that's obvious, how you are connected internally and with the outside world, and how distinctive you are. Because if every place is the same, obviously being distinctive is one of the major assets a city has. Now, this is an interesting statistic. 15 years ago, people chose the company or the job where they were going to go. So they were led by that. Recently, a survey by this organization here found out that 64%, this is in North America, choose the city first before the job. Now, if that is true also in Sweden, looks just like some words. It's absolutely dramatic, because that means how attractive is that city? What is it offering in terms of stimulation is absolutely the key question. So obviously we need skilled people, as we know. I don't know, I presume she's skilled. She's just got a degree. Obviously we need innovations and so on, and I thought with next to Magnus's place, I wish I'd had someone sitting there. Why didn't you sit there so I could have taken a photo of you with a computer? But anyway, I mean, this reminds us of the types of other possible innovations that could happen in Umeå in the next 10 years related to being a winter city, essentially. I sat there and my bum was very warm. It is true, it is warm. So that's amazing. I'm going to show this picture wherever I go now. So this will be the image of Umeå elsewhere. The other thing is, of course, connectivities in various ways, and obviously we realize that the virtual and the physical world is combining. But the essential thing about great places, and it's probably easier for smaller places to be that, is to combine the intimate feeling we associate with a village with some other feeling of being, in a sense, metropolitan. And that is really the difficult trick. And great places manage to combine both of those things simultaneously. And I think great places, too, have a sort of generosity. This is just a sort of funny organization which says you should be kind in a random way, but generosity in some public sense. And because you're going to New York, Frederick, where are you? He's gone to pick up the Latvians. That is, I know it's a piece of public art, but to me it somehow represents that sense of giving back and generosity. Now, there are four ways people like to think of the creative city, and although when I initially wrote the book it didn't start in this particular way, as I'm about to show. And the first thing is that people say a creative city is a place that has a strong arts fabric. Now, obviously we know that the arts are significant, a very strong form of cultural expression. We know they make you look at things differently. For me, for example, I find the way when you address a problem, whatever the problem is artistically, you gain different sort of insights. It's a different way of approaching things than perhaps a technical approach or a scientific approach. And clearly you have institutions here in Umeå which obviously foster that in a variety of ways. But the point being, I suppose, is how many artists are there in the city? Perhaps 1%, I don't know, 2% or so. And obviously I think that's an important dimension. A second way is that people say that the creative city is a place that has a strong creative economy, which, as you know, is film, design, all of these things. And clearly that is obviously significant and a major part of a creative city. But if you look at cities that have these sectors very strongly, on average they might have 6% of people. London, in fact, has 16%, but in general there might be 6%. And the question we've got here, which is a conversation I had with Magnus yesterday, is the extent to which you put everything together in one place, this creative economy stuff, or it's clustered and is very closely clustered, or whether it's more widely clustered along a stretch, an area, two areas, and so on. So that's a big question. How closely these things are connected. Are they in one building? Are they in many buildings? And so on. Now, clearly one would expect a creative city to have a very strong design component, and I know you've used design, for example, in rethinking municipal services. And obviously there are very innovative things we perhaps not that, but we could do with design as a whole. But design can also, in some sense, be about advocacy. This is taking I Love New York and saying that Copenhagen's strategy is to have 50% of people riding bicycles by 2015. So one can use design in multifarious ways. The third way people sometimes say what is a creative city is to say that it is a city that has a strong creative class. That is, those artists, those designers, musicians, and all of those other people, those singers and whatever filmmakers, as well as the scientists, the researchers, the brain workers, the knowledge workers. And typically in a city, perhaps like you, with your characteristics, you might have 30%, you might have that. Another city in Sweden would probably have less. Now, clearly there are very many interesting, innovative things. I mean, this, if you take that orange thing, put it on your tongue, a blind person can see that shape. They can see, even though they're blind, that's how they would see a person. So clearly an intense degree of creativity was put into enabling that to happen. This robot can dance salsa, so that's also quite clever. Now, the only problem is that if only the creative people are this 30%, that means all of you, all of us, are very boring. We must be boring because there's only a class of creative people. You're particularly boring there. And so are you. You're absolutely boring. Now, I, of course, disagree with that because I think you can have innovative solutions from bureaucrats. There can be creative bureaucracies, social workers, creative business people, and so on.